Kira Monroe stood outside the glass skyscraper, one battered suitcase at her feet, and whispered the same promise she'd made at her mother's funeral. Never depend on anyone again. The building before her pierced Seoul's gray morning sky like a shard of ice. 37 floors of steel and ambition. Somewhere inside those tinted windows worked the man who would either save her life or shatter what remained of it. Kang Joon-ho, Korea's youngest tech billionaire. 34. Brilliant. Unreachable. She thought of Malik, her baby brother, 21, sitting in a college dorm room half a world away. His tuition was due in 6 weeks. The debt collectors had stopped sending letters and started showing up at doors. Her mother's medical bills still arrived like accusations she couldn't answer. This job was survival. Inside, the lobby smelled like expensive leather and ruthless success. Her heels clicked against marble so polished she could see her reflection. A curvy black woman in a charcoal suit bought secondhand, carrying confidence she didn't quite own. The elevator ride to the executive floor was silent, suffocating. When the doors opened, she entered a world of glass walls and whispered ambitions. Everyone moved with precision. No one smiled. Then she saw him. Kang Junho sat behind a desk that could have housed a family, eyes locked on his tablet. He didn't look up when she entered, didn't acknowledge her existence until his assistant cleared her throat twice. When he finally raised his gaze, the temperature dropped. Cold, calculating, empty. He stood, extended a hand. His grip was firm, impersonal, exactly 2 seconds long. Miss Monroe. His English was flawless, accent barely there. You'll manage my schedule, correspondence, international contracts. I expect perfection. I don't repeat instructions. Questions? No, sir. Good. That was it. No welcome. No warmth. Just brutal efficiency wrapped in $1,000 suit. But as she turned to leave, Kira noticed something everyone else seemed to miss, a silver photo frame on his desk, deliberately turned face down. Hidden. She wondered what image a man like Kang Joon-ho couldn't bear to see. Later, in the break room, a woman named Ji-woo poured coffee and leaned close, voice dropping to a whisper. Mr. Kang doesn't smile, she said, eyes darting toward his glass office. And he doesn't keep people who expect him to. Kira watched him through the transparent walls, rigid spine, sharp movements, a man built entirely of ice and discipline. She remembered her mother's last words, "Baby, sometimes the loneliest people need love most." Kira lifted her coffee and made a different promise. She would survive here, she would save Malik, and she would not, under any circumstances, let herself care about the frozen man watching Seoul like a king surveying an empire he couldn't feel. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your location below and stay close. What happens next will break him completely. 3 months later, Kira had become invisible in the way essential things often are. She knew Junho's coffee order by heart. Americano, no sugar, double shot on Mondays. She knew he skipped lunch when quarterly reports loomed. She knew the exact angle of his jaw when he was about to terminate someone, and the way his left hand twitched when investors tried to deceive him. She knew him in ways he didn't know himself, and he never looked at her. Not really. Every night at 11, Kira locked herself in the empty conference room and video called Malik. The time difference meant catching him before classes, sleepy-eyed, hopeful, alive. "You good, sis?" he always asked. "Perfect," she always lied, because the truth was complicated. The truth was Seoul felt like living inside a snow globe. Beautiful, isolated, cold. The truth was sending money home each month meant eating convenience store meals alone. The truth was she'd never felt more competent and more lonely simultaneously. But Malik was thriving. His grades were exceptional. He talked about graduate school now. That was enough. It had to be. What Kira didn't know was that Junho watched her through the glass. He observed everything. The way she hummed Billie Holiday while organizing contracts. The way she brought ginger tea to sick interns without being asked. The way she remembered Assistant Director Park's daughter's birthday and left a handwritten card on his desk. She made the 40th floor feel human. He resented noticing. Junho had built his empire on emotional distance. Feelings were inefficiency. Attachment was fatal weakness. He'd learned that lesson at 19, standing in a hospital corridor while doctors failed to restart his father's heart. Cardiac arrest during a hostile merger negotiation. His father, warm, Generous, recklessly affectionate, had clutched his chest and collapsed. The stress, doctors explained, the cost of caring too deeply about too many people. His mother never recovered. She faded slowly, grief disguised as pneumonia, gone within 2 years. Junho inherited billions and a belief: love destroys. So he built walls higher than his buildings, hired the brilliant, fired the emotional, kept everyone at calculated distance, until Kira Monroe walked into his life with her secondhand confidence and unbreakable grace, making him wonder if surviving and living were actually the same thing. It started small. One Tuesday, during a 9-hour investor crisis that nearly killed a multi-billion-won deal, Kira slipped into the war room and placed chamomile tea at his elbow. She didn't speak, didn't interrupt the negotiation, just set it down silently and disappeared. He stared at the cup for 90 seconds, then he drank it. The deal closed successfully at midnight. He never thanked her. But the next morning, an ergonomic chair appeared at her desk, the kind that cost more than her monthly salary, designed for people who worked impossible hours. No card, no explanation. Kira ran her fingers over the leather and smiled softly. The months accumulated like this: small, silent exchanges, a language built in gestures instead of words. Then Minso visited. Junho's younger sister was everything he wasn't: vibrant, affectionate, shamelessly warm. She arrived like a storm, hugged him despite his stiffness, and immediately noticed Kira. "You must be the miracle," Minso said, grinning widely. "My brother's been almost human lately." Kira laughed. "I just organize his calendar." "You do considerably more than that." Minso's eyes held knowing kindness. "Believe me." Later in the cafe, 3 floors down, Minso leaned across their table. "He watches you," she said quietly, "through the glass walls, when you're talking to your brother, when you're humming those old songs, when you think nobody's paying attention." Kira's heartbeat stuttered. "He's my employer. He's my brother, and I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you." Minso's smile turned melancholy. "But he'll never say it." "Why not?" "Because he believes love is what destroyed our parents." She stirred her latte slowly, deliberately. "Our father died loving too openly. Our mother died loving too completely. Junho decided the only way to survive was to love nothing at all." Kira's throat tightened. "That's not survival. That's just existing in black and white." "I know." Minso reached across and squeezed her hand gently. "But you can't rescue people who refuse salvation. You can only decide whether you'll wait while they rescue themselves." That evening, Kira stayed late finishing contract revisions. Through the glass partition, she saw Junho still working, tie loosened, exhaustion carved into his shoulders like sculpture. She made chamomile tea, walked to his office, set it down without speaking. As she turned to leave, his voice stopped her. "Miss Monroe?" She turned slowly. "Yes, sir?" For exactly 4 seconds he looked at her. Really looked. Like he was trying to memorize something he was terrified to keep. Then the moment fractured. "Thank you," he whispered. 2 words, barely audible. But Kira heard everything he couldn't say: the loneliness, the fear, the wanting he'd imprisoned behind glass walls and corporate efficiency. She nodded once and left. In her reflection on the darkened window, she saw him watching her disappear. And for the first time since her mother's funeral, Kira wondered if some promises were meant to be broken. Elias Grant arrived on a Wednesday morning like sunshine breaking through Seoul's perpetual gray. Where Junho was ice, Elias was warmth. Where Junho measured words like currency, Elias spoke in easy laughter and genuine smiles. He was American, 42, with kind eyes and the sort of presence that made rooms feel smaller and safer simultaneously. Global Partnerships Director, he introduced himself to the staff, leaning against Kira's desk with comfortable confidence. "Which means I'll probably be asking you 1,000 questions, Miss Monroe. Hope you're patient." "That's literally my job description," Kira said, smiling despite herself. "Then we'll get along perfectly." And they did. Elias had grown up in Atlanta. Kira was from a small coastal town in South Carolina. They traded stories about sweet tea and summer storms, about sisters who braided hair on Sunday porches and brothers who thought they were invincible. "My nephew's at Morehouse," Elias mentioned during a coffee break. "Smart kid. Sounds like your Malik." Kira's whole face lit up. "Malik wants to be a doctor, pediatrics specifically. He's always been good with kids. You must be proud." Terrified, mostly. Medical school costs, she stopped herself. "But we'll figure it out." Elias studied her with gentle understanding. You're doing this alone, aren't you? I've been doing everything alone since I was 19. Something shifted in his expression. Respect, recognition, the kind of knowing that only comes from shared experience. They started having lunch together, quick conversations that stretched longer. Elias talked about his daughter at Yale, his divorce 5 years ago, his love for jazz that matched Kira's perfectly. From his glass office, Jun-ho watched. His jaw tightened when Elias made Kira laugh. His fingers drummed his desk when they lingered in conversation. His left hand formed a fist when Elias touched her shoulder casually, familiarly, like they'd known each other for years instead of weeks. He told himself it was nothing. He told himself he didn't care. He told himself lies that tasted like poison. Then came the afternoon that shattered his control completely. The elevator doors opened, and Elias stepped out carrying an enormous bouquet of deep red roses, gift bags balanced in his other arm. He walked straight to Kira's desk. Miss Monroe, could I borrow you for a moment? In my office? Kira blinked, surprised. Of course. Through the glass walls, those transparent barriers that revealed everything, Junho watched them enter Elias's office. Elias closed the door, set down the flowers, pulled out a small wrapped box. Kira's hand flew to her mouth. Even from a distance, Junho could see tears forming in her eyes. Then Elias said something that made her shoulders shake, and he pulled her into his arms, a long, tender embrace. Kira hesitated for only a heartbeat before melting into it, her face against Elias's shoulder, his hand gentle on her back, both of them swaying slightly like they were the only two people in the world. Junho's vision narrowed. The room tilted. His hands, steady hands that had signed billion-1 deals without trembling, shook violently. Something primitive and terrifying clawed up his throat. Jealousy. Raw, vicious jealousy he'd never felt before, never allowed himself to feel. Because feeling meant caring. And caring meant weakness. And weakness meant he grabbed his phone and texted with more force than necessary. My office. Now. When Kira finally emerged from Elias's office 20 minutes later, cheeks warm and eyes bright, clutching a gift bag close to her chest, Junho's message was waiting. She glanced toward his office. He stood at the window, back rigid, hands clasped behind him like a general preparing for war. Kira's smile faded. She'd seen that posture before, right before someone got fired. She knocked softly on his door. Come in. She entered, closing the door behind her. Sir, you needed... What did he give you? The question came out sharper than he intended. Harsher. Kira blinked. I'm sorry. Grant, what did he give you? Junho turned from the window, and the expression on his face made her breath catch. He looked wrecked, furious, lost. Textbooks, she said quietly, for Malik, medical school preparation guides. They're expensive, and Elias noticed I'd been researching them during my lunch breaks. He said, her voice softened. He said he wished someone had helped his daughter that way. Junho's jaw worked. How considerate. It was kind. Yes. You seemed very grateful. The words were acid. Kira's confusion shifted to something else. Understanding, maybe. Hope, possibly. Mr. Kang, are you... That will be all, Miss Monroe, but you called me in here. And I said that will be all. His voice was ice again. Walls rebuilt in seconds. Kira stood there for a long moment, studying him. The rigid shoulders, the clenched fists, the carefully blank expression that couldn't quite hide what burned beneath. Yes, sir, she whispered. She turned to leave. Miss Monroe. She stopped, hope flaring dangerously in her chest. Yes? Junho stared at her like she was a gay equation he couldn't solve, a variable that destroyed all his carefully calculated formulas. Nothing, he finally said. Close the door on your way out. Kira left, and Junho stood alone in his glass cage, watching her return to her desk where Elias was waiting with coffee and easy conversation. And for the first time in 15 years, Kang Junho wondered if the walls he'd built to protect himself had actually just created the perfect presume. The next 2 weeks were torture disguised as professionalism. Junho became impossible. Emails that used to say, approved, now demanded 3 rounds of revisions. Deadlines that were reasonable became brutal. His silences stretched so long, Kira wondered if she'd become invisible again. But worse, because now she knew what it felt like to be seen. Did I do something wrong? She finally asked one evening, standing in his doorway with reports he'd rejected for the second time. Junho didn't look up from his screen. Your work has been adequate. Adequate. The word tasted bitter. 3 months ago, you told the board I was the most competent executive assistant you'd ever had. 3 months ago, you weren't distracted. I'm not. Kira stopped, took a breath. What exactly am I distracted by, sir? His eyes finally met hers. Dark, stormy, dangerous. You tell me, Miss Monroe. The air between them crackled with everything they weren't saying. Kira left without another word. Meanwhile, Elias continued to orbit her life like warmth she hadn't known she was missing. Lunch invitations became routine. He asked about Malik constantly, genuinely interested in her brother's dreams. He shared stories about his daughter, his messy divorce, his late nights wondering if he was doing fatherhood right from a distance. You're a good brother to Malik, he said one afternoon over bibimbap. That kind of sacrifice, putting your whole life on hold for family, that's rare. It doesn't feel like sacrifice. It feels like love. Elias smiled. That's because you're exceptional, Kira. The use of her first name should have felt presumptuous. Instead, it felt like relief. I'm just doing what needs to be done. No, Elias said seriously. You're doing what most people wouldn't. There's a difference. He paused, then added carefully, if you ever need help, with tuition, with anything, I hope you know you can ask. Kira's throat tightened. I can't accept. I know, I'm just saying the offer exists. His eyes were kind. You don't have to carry everything alone, you know. But alone was all Kira knew how to be. The office gossip spread like wildfire. They're perfect together, Jiwoo whispered in the break room. Both American, both smart, both actually warm-blooded unlike some people. She glanced meaningfully toward Junho's office. Kira said nothing. Then came the storm. A typhoon warning forced most staff home early, but a critical contract needed finishing before morning. Kira stayed. Of course she stayed. So did Junho. By 9 p.m., they were alone on the 40th floor. Thunder rattled the windows. Lightning turned Seoul into snapshots of silver and shadow. The power flickered, died. Emergency lights cast everything in eerie half-darkness. Backup generators will kick in shortly, Junho said from his office doorway. Kira nodded, saving her work manually. The silence stretched to all sides. Rain attacked the glass like it was trying to break through. Why did you really come to Seoul? Juno asked suddenly. Kira looked up, surprised. He never asked personal questions. I told you, the job. The truth, Miss Monroe. She set down her pen, met his eyes across the dim space. I needed to become someone my mother would be proud of, she said quietly. She died believing I'd never amount to anything because I spent my 20s taking care of her instead of building a career. The debt collector said the same thing. My ex-boyfriend said the same thing. Her voice didn't waver. So I came here to prove them all wrong, to prove I could be more than the girl who stayed. Something shifted in Junho's expression. Something raw. Your mother was already proud, he said. Anyone who sacrifices themselves for family, that's not weakness. That's... He stopped. The lights flickered back on. The moment shattered. Junho's hand was halfway across the distance between them. He pulled it back like he'd been burned. Finish the contract, he said, voice cold again. I'll review it in the morning. He disappeared into his office. Kira sat frozen, staring at the space where his hand had been. Almost. He'd almost touched her. The next day, Elias asked her to lunch again. This time, his expression was serious. I need to tell you something, he said over coffee. I've been offered a position, Director of European Operations, based in London. Kira's heart sank. Elias, that's amazing. I haven't accepted yet. It would mean leaving in 3 months. He reached across the table, covering her hand with his. But I wanted you to know, if you wanted to come with me, there's a position there. Senior Executive Manager, better pay, better hours. And, he smiled gently, London's closer to home than Seoul is. Kira couldn't breathe. I'm not asking for anything you're not ready to give, Elias continued softly. I just think you deserve someone who sees you, who appreciates you, who isn't afraid to show it. Through the cafe window, Kira saw Junho's car pull up to the building. He stepped out, saw them through the glass, saw Elias holding her hand. Their eyes met across the distance. Junho's expression went completely blank. Then he turned and walked inside without looking back. That night, watching Elias walk her to her car with his umbrella shielding her from rain, his hand gentle on her back, Kira felt something break inside her chest. Elias offered everything safe, everything easy. Junho offered nothing but silence and walls, and a love he'd never admit existed. The choice should have been simple, so why did it feel impossible? The text came at 11 p.m. on a Friday. Come to my penthouse. There's a file we need to review before the Singapore meeting. Kira stared at her phone, still in her pajamas, exhaustion settling into her bones. She'd worked 60 hours that week. Her eyes burned, her body ached, but it was Junho asking, so she went. His penthouse occupied the top 3 floors of a building that overlooked all of Seoul like a kingdom of lights. The private elevator required a code. The doors opened directly into his living space, all floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist furniture, and carefully curated emptiness. He stood at the window in dark slacks and a white shirt, no tie, sleeves rolled to his elbows. He didn't turn when she entered. Sir? Kira set down her laptop, smoothing her soft cream sweater nervously. What file did you need me to review? Silence. Mr. Kang, there is no file. The words landed like stones in still water. Kira's heart stuttered. I don't understand. Junho finally turned. His face was devastated, raw in ways she'd never seen. Why did you really ask me here? She whispered. I needed to see you. His voice cracked. Away from him. The air between them became electric, dangerous. Away from Elias, Kira said carefully. Away from everyone. Junho moved closer, each step deliberate. I needed to see you without the glass walls, without the performance, without pretending I don't. He stopped himself violently. Don't what? Don't notice everything about you. The confession poured out like a dam breaking. I notice when you skip lunch because you're sending money home. I notice when you're tired but smile anyway. I notice when you hum Billie Holiday on Thursdays because that's when you call your brother and it makes you homesick. Kira's breath caught. You notice me? I can't stop noticing you. His hands flexed at his sides like he was fighting not to reach for her. You walk into a room and the air changes. You exist and everything becomes, he struggled for words, more. Everything becomes more. Tears burned her eyes. Then why do you treat me like I'm invisible? Because seeing you terrifies me. Junho's voice dropped to a whisper. Because I've spent 15 years building walls to survive, and you walked into my office and demolished every single one without even trying. I don't understand what you want from me, Kira said, frustration and hope warring in her chest. I don't either, he laughed bitterly. I don't know how to want things that aren't strategic. I don't know how to need someone without it feeling like weakness. Needing people isn't weakness. It killed my parents. The words came out jagged. My father loved too much, and his heart literally stopped. My mother loved too much, and grief destroyed her. I watched love murder everyone I cared about, Kira. So I promised myself I would never. He stopped, stared at her like she was both salvation and destruction. Never what? She whispered. Never let myself feel what I feel when I look at you. The confession hung between them, fragile and fierce. Kira stepped closer. And what do you feel? Everything, Junho breathed. Terrified, desperate, alive in ways I haven't been since I was 19 years old. His eyes searched hers. You make me feel invisible and seen at the same time. I don't know which is worse. That's what you do to me, Kira said, tears finally spilling over. Every single day, you look through me like I don't exist, but somehow you see everything. You ignore me, but you notice when I skip lunch, you never touch me, but... Her voice broke. But I feel you everywhere. Junho's control shattered. He closed the distance between them, his hand rising to cup her face with devastating gentleness. His thumb brushed away her tears. I'm so tired of pretending, he whispered. Then stop. Their faces were inches apart. His breath ghosted across her lips. Time suspended. Kira. His phone exploded with sound. They jerked apart like they'd been electrocuted. Junho grabbed it, jaw clenching as he read the screen. Emergency board meeting. The Singapore merger, someone leaked our terms. We have 20 minutes before the press destroys everything. Reality crashed back in. Kira stepped backward, wrapping her arms around herself. You should go. Kira. Wait. You need to save your company, Mr. Kang. Her voice was steady despite her shaking hands. That's what matters. That's not. He stopped. The walls were rebuilding in real time, brick by brick. I'll call my driver to take you home. I'll get a cab. She gathered her laptop with mechanical precision. At the elevator, she pressed the button and waited, back straight, composure perfect. Kira, her name, just her name, without the miss for the first time ever. She turned, hope blazing dangerously bright in her chest. Junho stood across the room, silhouetted against Seoul's glittering lights, perhaps looking like a man drowning on dry land. He started. The elevator dinged. The moment died. "Good night, Mr. Kang," Kira whispered. The doors closed on whatever he'd been about to say. Kira rode down 43 floors with tears streaming down her face, knowing that almost was the cruelest word in any language. Above her, Junho stood alone in his perfect penthouse, surrounded by everything he'd built and nothing that mattered, and finally understood that his walls hadn't protected him from pain. They just guaranteed he'd suffer alone. The envelope sat on Junho's desk Monday morning like an execution notice. Pristine, professional, devastating. Letter of resignation. Kira Monroe. Effective in 2 weeks. His hands trembled as he read the single paragraph of polite corporate language that translated to, "I can't survive loving you anymore." He read it 5 times. Then he set it down carefully, like it might explode, and something inside him simply broke. In the break room, Kira explained her decision to Minseo over coffee. Neither of them was drinking. "I can't do this anymore," Kira said quietly. "I can't love someone who won't let himself be loved." "He does love you." "Loving someone in secret isn't love, Minseo. It's cowardice." Kira's voice cracked. "I've spent my whole life waiting for people to choose me. My mother loved me but chose her pride over treatment. My ex loved me but chose his comfort over my dreams. I'm done waiting for your brother to decide if I'm worth the risk." Minseo's eyes filled with tears. "What will you do?" "Elias offered me a position in London." Kira smiled sadly. "Director of International Operations. It's everything I've worked for. Better pay, better title, better than loving Junho, better than destroying myself waiting for him to wake up." That afternoon, Elias found Kira in the archives, boxing up files with mechanical precision. "London offer still stands," he said gently, "if you want it." Kira looked up. Elias was kind, safe, everything Junho wasn't. "Tell me honestly," she said. "Why are you doing this?" "You barely know me." "Because I see you, Kira." Elias leaned against the doorframe. "I see someone brilliant and brave who spent her whole life making herself smaller so other people could feel big. And I think," he smiled sadly, "I think you deserve someone who's not afraid to stand beside you at your full height. And you're that person? I could be, if you let me." He moved closer. "Come with me. Fresh start. No more waiting for someone who'll never choose you." Down the hallway, hidden behind a corner, Junho froze. He'd been heading to the archives to, what? Beg her to stay? Admit everything? Finally be brave? But now he heard Elias offering her the world, heard himself described as someone who would never choose her, heard the truth that destroyed him. "Okay," Kira whispered. "I'll come to London." "Yeah, yeah." Junho heard them embrace, heard Kira's quiet sob of relief, heard Elias promise to take care of her. And he turned and walked away before they could see him shatter. Alone in his office, Junho finally picked up the picture frame he'd kept face down for 15 years. His parents on their wedding day. His father, young, handsome, radiantly happy, gazing at his mother like she'd hung every star in the sky. His mother laughing, head thrown back, completely free. It was the last photograph of his father smiling. 3 years later, he was dead. Junho had blamed love, blamed emotion, blamed vulnerability for destroying them. But looking at the photo now, seeing that pure joy, he wondered if he'd gotten it wrong. Maybe his father hadn't died from loving. Maybe he'd died from living. And maybe, God, maybe, refusing to live at all was an even slower death. The door opened without knocking. Minseo stood there, furious and heartbroken. "You're really going to let her go? She's made her choice. Because you gave her no other option." Minseo's voice shook. You're becoming exactly what you feared, Junho. Alone, powerful, empty. You think you're protecting yourself, but you're just..." She gestured at his pristine office, his perfect view, his hollow kingdom. "You're just building a beautiful grave." "I'm surviving." "No." Minso's eyes filled with tears. "You're already dead. You just haven't admitted it yet." She left him alone with his walls and his terror and his perfectly preserved loneliness. Friday night, the office threw Kira a goodbye dinner. The restaurant was warm, crowded, full of colleagues who'd come to love her competence and kindness. Elias sat beside her, attentive and gentle, making her laugh with stories about London rain and terrible British coffee. Kira smiled, thanked everyone, accepted gifts and well wishes, And from his office, 40 stories above, Junho watched through the window. He could see her laughing, see Elias's hand on her back, see the future she was choosing, safe, warm, far away from him. The photo of his parents sat face up on his desk now. His father's joyful face seemed to ask, was surviving worth this? Junho looked at Kira one last time. She glanced up suddenly, as if she could feel his gaze across the distance. Their eyes met through glass and space and everything they'd never said. Then someone called her name, and she turned away. Junho sat alone in his glass tower, surrounded by everything he'd built to keep himself safe, and finally understood that his greatest fear hadn't been dying from love. It had been living without it. And he'd chosen wrong. The cemetery was quiet at midnight. Junho hadn't been here in 7 years. He'd sent flowers on the anniversary of their deaths, donated to charities in their names, done everything except actually visit at the place where they rested, because visiting meant confronting what he'd lost and what he'd become because of it. The gravestone was simple, elegant, Kang Daejung and Kim Yoon-hee, beloved husband and wife, forever together. Junho knelt on the cold ground, still wearing his suit from the office, and stared at his father's name carved in stone. I thought you died because you loved too much, he whispered to the darkness. I thought emotion killed you, so I built my whole life around never feeling anything. His voice cracked. But I got it wrong, didn't I? Thunder rumbled overhead. Rain began to fall. You didn't die because you loved Mom. Junho's hands shook. You died having lived completely. You died having felt everything. You died knowing what it meant to be chosen and to choose someone every single day. The rain came harder, and I'm 34 years old, and I've never chosen anything that mattered. I've never risked anything real. He broke. I've never told someone I loved them. His father's wedding photo flashed in his mind, that radiant joy, that fearless vulnerability. There's a woman, Junho said to the grave, to the rain, to the universe. Kira, he laughed through tears. She's everything you would have loved about Mom. Strong, kind, brave enough to carry the world alone, but soft enough to cry over old jazz songs. The wind picked up. She's leaving tomorrow, going to London with a man who's better than me, kinder than me, someone who's not afraid to love her out loud. Junho's voice dropped to a broken whisper. And I let her go because I was terrified, because I thought survival was more important than living. He pressed his palm against the cold stone. But you didn't survive, Dad. You lived. And maybe, his chest heaved, maybe that's the whole point. Minso's words echoed in his mind. The only thing more dangerous than loving her is losing her without ever trying. Junho stood. Rain soaked through his expensive suit. He looked at his parents' names one last time. I'm going to try, he promised them. I'm going to be brave, even if it destroys me. He walked back to his car as lightning split the sky. For the first time in 15 years, Kang Junho chose to live. Kira's last day began at dawn. She dressed carefully. Navy dress, her mother's pearl earrings, dignity worn like armor. Her apartment was already mostly packed. Her flight to London left at 8 p.m. This was just goodbye, just closure, just the end of everything that might have been. The elevator doors opened on the 40th floor, and Kira stopped breathing. White roses, everywhere. Dozens of bouquets lined the hallway, covered every desk, filled every corner with soft, devastating beauty. White roses, her favorite flower, something she'd mentioned exactly once in a casual conversation 8 months ago. Something only someone who noticed everything would remember. Each bouquet had a card. Kira picked up the nearest one with shaking hands. Please stay. She grabbed another. Please stay. And another. Please stay. Tears blurred her vision. She walked through the office like moving through a dream, reading the same 2 words over and over. Staff members watched in awed silence. Jiwoo was crying. Even the stern Director Park looked misty-eyed. At the end of the hall stood Junho. No suit jacket, tie loosened, hair disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it all night, eyes red-rimmed and raw, no armor, no walls. Just a man terrified and hoping anyway. Kira's breath caught. Elias emerged from his office, saw the roses, saw Junho, and understood immediately. He walked to Kira slowly, gently. He's the one, isn't he? Elias asked quietly. He's always been the one. Kira could only nod, tears streaming. Elias smiled sadly. I hoped I could be enough, but he glanced at Junho. You don't get over a love like that. You just learn to live around the hole it leaves. Elias, I'm so sorry. Don't be. He kissed her forehead softly. Go get him before he passes out from holding his breath. Kira laughed through her tears. She walked toward Junho slowly, each step feeling like crossing a universe. When she stood before him, close enough to touch, neither of them moved. You remembered white roses, she whispered. I remember everything about you. His voice shook. The way you hum Nina Simone on Wednesdays, the way you tuck your hair behind your left ear when you're nervous, the way you laugh at terrible jokes to make people feel better, the way you... He stopped, started again. The way you made me want to live again. Junho, I know I'm too late, he said desperately. I know I wasted every chance. I know you're leaving and I have no right to ask you to stay. But Kira, his eyes held hers with devastating intensity. I had to try. I had to be brave for once. Even if you still leave, I needed you to know that someone sees you. That someone, he swallowed hard, that someone loves you. Completely. Terrifyingly. In ways I don't even have words for yet. The office was silent. Seoul held its breath. And Kira Monroe, who'd spent her whole life waiting to be chosen, finally heard the words she'd been dying to hear. Junho's office door closed behind them with a soft click that felt like the world shifting. They stood facing each other, the city sprawling beneath the windows, morning light making everything too bright and too real. Why? Kira asked, voice breaking on the single word. Why now? Why today when I'm supposed to be leaving? Because I visited my parents' grave last night. Junho's hands trembled at his sides. Because I finally understood that I've spent 15 years being so afraid of dying like my father that I forgot how to live like him. Your father died happy, Junho interrupted softly. He died having loved completely. He died knowing what it meant to be chosen. And I looked at his grave and realized the real tragedy wasn't that he died. It was that I've been alive all these years without ever really living. Kira's tears fell freely now. I notice you when you're quiet, Junho continued, words pouring out like he'd been holding them back forever. When you're tired but pretend you're fine. When you skip lunch to save money for Malik. When you think no one's watching and you look so damn sad it breaks something in my chest. He moved closer. I love the way you hum when you work, Billie Holiday on Thursdays, Nina Simone on Wednesdays, Etta James when you're missing home. I love the way you bring soup to sick interns. I love the way you remember everyone's birthday. I love the way you carry the world on your shoulders without asking anyone to help. Juno. Her voice cracked. I love the way you tuck your hair behind your ear when you're nervous. I love that you wear your mother's pearls on important days. I love that you call Malik every single night, even though the time difference is brutal. I love that you're brave enough to leave everything familiar to save someone you love. He was close enough to touch her now, but he kept his hands carefully at his sides. I didn't say it because I was terrified, he whispered. Because loving you felt like losing control of everything I'd built. Because wanting you felt like weakness. Because needing you felt like the most dangerous thing I'd ever done. And now, Kira breathed, now I understand that I already lost control. His voice broke. I already fell. I've been in love with you since you left chamomile tea on my desk like it was nothing, since you smiled at me like I was human instead of just a title, since you existed in my world and made everything mean something again. Kira stepped forward, closing the final distance. Say it, she whispered. Please. I need to hear you say it. Junho cupped her face with shaking hands, thumbs brushing away her tears. I love you, Kira Monroe. His voice was raw, honest, devastating. I love you in ways I don't have words for, in ways I'm still learning, in ways that terrify me and heal me and make me want to be brave. I've loved you since the chamomile tea, Kira confessed, her hands coming up to cover his. Since the ergonomic chair appeared at my desk. Since you said that thank you like the words cost you everything. Since you looked at me like I mattered even when you pretended I didn't. You matter, Junho said fiercely. You're the only thing that matters. Then why did you wait until I was leaving? Because I'm a coward. The admission cost him. Because I needed to lose you to understand what having you meant. He pressed his forehead to hers. Because I'm broken, Kira. I'm damaged and cold, and I don't know how to love someone without being terrified it'll destroy me. Love isn't supposed to be safe, Kira whispered. I know that now. His breath ghosted across her lips. So I'm asking you, begging you, don't go to London. Stay. Build something with me. Not just a company or a career, but a life. A real life where we're both brave enough to try. What if we fail? Then we fail together. Junho pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. But Kira, what if we don't? What if we're extraordinary? What if this terrifying, impossible thing between us is exactly what we've both been running from because it's the only thing real enough to save us? Kira's hand slid up to frame his face. I'm still scared, she admitted. So am I. He smiled, genuinely smiled, for the first time she could remember. Be scared with me anyway. Then Kira kissed him, soft at first, tentative, like they were both learning a language they'd never spoken. Then Junho's control shattered. He kissed her like she was air and he'd been drowning, like she was home and he'd been lost, like she was everything he'd been too afraid to want and brave enough to claim anyway. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Junho rested his forehead against hers. Stay, he whispered one more time. Kira smiled through her tears. I'm not going anywhere. Outside the office, staff erupted in cheers, and for the first time in 15 years, Kang Junho let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, love wasn't the thing that destroyed you. Maybe it was the only thing that could make you whole. 6 months later, the 40th floor felt like a different universe. Kira Monroe, now Vice President of Global Community Outreach, stood in her new office, reviewing proposals for educational programs in underserved communities. It was her idea, her vision, brought to life with Junho's unwavering support. The board approved full funding, Junho said from her doorway, smiling in that way that still made her heart skip. Your Seoul Youth Technology Initiative launches next month. Our initiative, Kira corrected, crossing to kiss him softly. I wouldn't be here without you. You'd be in London running their entire operation. He pulled her closer. I just gave you a reason to stay. The office around them had transformed too. Laughter echoed in hallways that used to hold only hushed efficiency. Junho smiled in meetings now, actually smiled, and his desk displayed photos face up, him and Kira at Minseo's birthday, at the company charity gala, stealing a moment on a quiet Sunday morning. The Frozen King had learned to thaw. Malik lands in an hour, Kira said, checking her watch, nervously. You're sure about this? I'm meeting the most important person in your life. Junho straightened his tie unnecessarily. Why wouldn't I be terrified? But when Malik arrived, tall, bright-eyed, so much like Kira, it made Junho's chest tight. The fear dissolved. So you're the guy, Malik said, assessing him with brotherly protectiveness. I'm the guy who loves your sister, Junho replied honestly, and who's grateful every day she took a chance on me, close quote. Malik studied him for a long moment. Then he grinned and pulled Junho into a hug that felt like approval, acceptance, family. Take care of her, Malik whispered. She's spent her whole life taking care of everyone else. I know, Junho said quietly. I promise. Later that week, a postcard arrived from London. Elias's handwriting, warm and familiar. Kira, heard about your VP promotion. Knew you'd be extraordinary wherever you landed. You made the right choice. He's lucky. So are you. Kira tucked it in her desk drawer with a bittersweet smile. That evening, Junho led her to the building's rooftop as sunset painted Seoul in gold and amber. I have something for you, he said, pulling a key from his pocket. Move in with me. Make my penthouse a home instead of a museum. Fill it with your music and your laughter and your terrible habit of leaving coffee cups everywhere. Kira laughed, tears gathering. I have something for you too. She handed him a wrapped frame. Inside was a photo Minso had captured at the office New Year's party. Junho and Kira caught mid-laugh, his arm around her waist, both of them looking at each other like nothing else existed. Junho's breath caught. We look happy, Kira finished softly. We look happy. I was so afraid of becoming my father, Junho said, setting the frame down carefully and pulling Kira close. Loving someone and losing everything, building a life that could be destroyed by a single heartbeat stopping. He cupped her face. But you taught me the real loss was never loving at all. And you taught me I don't have to carry everything alone, Kira whispered. That asking for help isn't weakness. That being vulnerable with the right person is the bravest thing I can do. They kissed as the sun melted into the horizon. soul glittering beneath them like possibility made tangible. When they pulled apart, Kira rested her head on Junho's chest, listening to his heartbeat, steady, strong, alive. Sometimes, she murmured, the greatest strength isn't building walls to protect yourself, it's having the courage to let them fall for the right person. Junho held her tighter, breathing in the miracle of this moment of being chosen, of choosing, of finally understanding that survival without love wasn't living. It was just existing in beautiful, terrible loneliness. But this was everything. This was home.